And this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's episode, Rodgers and Hart, their lives and times and best hits. So, Richard Rodgers and Lorenz Hart are one of the greatest composer duos in history. Richard Rodgers wrote over 43 Broadway musicals and over 900 songs. His songs and compositions typically focus on characters and drama. He was also well known for his collaborations with Oscar Hammerstein and Lorenz Hart. His work spanned both theatre and films. He was also the first person to win an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar and a Tony Award as well as a Pulitzer Prize. Lorenz Hart was his longtime collaborator and fellow composer. He was often described as a poet. His songs ranged from the comedic to the tragic and were marked by brilliant wordplay and internal rhyme, which intensified the emotional effect of his music. So that was a bit of backdrop on Rodgers and Hart. More details coming up. Also coming up, some trending festival and album news. Stay tuned to the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva to find out more. We'll be right back after some music. And welcome back to the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's episode, Rodgers and Hart, their biographies and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about their biographies. Rodgers and Hart were two of the greatest composers in music and theatre. Richard Rodgers was born in 1902 and Lorenz Hart in 1895. They collaborated on 28 stage performances and more than 500 songs from 1919 till 1943. They first met while in university. Their very first collaboration was in the show Fly With Me, which premiered in Columbia University in 1920. That's also where they encountered Oscar Hammerstein, another long-term collaborator of theirs. They went on to collaborate for several years as composers, and then in 1925 they had a big hit with their Broadway musical The Garrick Gaieties. In that film, they had written a song called Manhattan, which went on to become a jazz classic and opened up new avenues for them in film and theatre. They soon developed a reputation as two of the leading composers in the US and had a string of successful Broadway musicals from 1925 to 31. Some of their best film compositions included Isn't It Romantic and Lover and Jump. Some of their Broadway musicals were later made into films, for instance On Your Toes, released in 1936, and Babes in Arms. According to Time magazine, their success was due to a spirit of adventure and commercial instinct. Rodgers and Hart would infuse the traditional with the innovative, allowing for breathtaking performances every time. Their compositions have especially found favor with jazz artists and cabaret singers. Two of their biggest adherents included Ella Fitzgerald and Chet Baker. Ella Fitzgerald once famously devoted an entire album to Rodgers and Hart songs. Lorenz Hart raised a new standard for Broadway songwriting. His lyrics were dazzling, sometimes playful, sometimes melancholic and vernacular. He had the ability to come up with deep emotional lyrics. Also, his trademark polysyllabic rhymes was one of his outstanding abilities. Rodgers was a composer of melodies, and his composing has been ranked with the best, people like Irving Berling and Jerome Kern. Rodgers and Hart would often base their musicals on existing theatres. For example, The Boys from Syracuse, released in 1938, was based on William Shakespeare's The Comedy of Errors. Also, their musicals frequently utilized dances, waltz and ballets. Some of their best stage and film productions included Babes in Arms, released in 1937, Mississippi, released in 1935, Spring is Here, released in 1930, and Betsy, released in 1926. Some of their best songs included My Funny Valentine, Falling in Love with Love, Here in My Arms, Mountain Greenery, My Heart Stood Still, and more. The Rodgers-Hart collaboration continued until Hart's death in 1943, following which a new partnership followed between Rodgers and Hammerstein. So now for a comparison between the Rodgers and Hart partnership with the Rodgers and Hammerstein collaboration. Hammerstein's lyrics were typically warm, sincere with occasional corniness. Hart's lyrics were sophisticated and more based on wordplay. And welcome back to the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's episode, Rodgers and Hart, their biographies and best hits. Now it's time for some trending festival news. The Smoke Jazz Club's annual Coltrane Festival is around the corner, and here's some updates. So the Smoke Jazz Club has been hailed as the #1 jazz club in New York City. Next year, January, promises a dazzling concert, and here are some of the names on the lineup: the Cookers, the Eubank Brothers, and more. The Eubank Brothers comprise a family of musicians, brothers Robin, Kevin, and Duane. They will be performing from January 22nd to 25th. The Cookers, a veteran hard bop band, will be enthralling the audience from January 29th to February 2nd. There's also the legendary Bill Charlap Trio performing from January 8th to 12th. Al Foster, a veteran jazz drummer, is collaborating with guest star Chris Potter from January 15th to 19th. The festivities end on February 5th with a performance by tenor saxophone titans Wayne Escoffery and Jimmy Green. The shows can also be enjoyed live stream online. For more information, please visit www.smokejazz.com. So that was some trending festival news on the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. We're going for a short break. We'll be right back after that. When we come back, we're going to be talking about some of Rodgers and Hart's best compositions of all time. Stay tuned. Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's episode, Rodgers and Hart, their biographies and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about some of their best compositions of all time. Here's a quick recap of what's coming up. The first song is called My Romance. This one was written for a 1935 musical called Jumbo starring Jimmy Durante. The musical went on to make waves and received some excellent reviews. It also went head to head with other great musicals of the time like Cole Porter's Jubilee and George Gershwin's Porgy and Bess. This song basically talks about how nice it is for the singer to be in her lover's presence. Another composition called Johnny One Note. This one was written for a 1937 musical called Babes in Arms. So the lyrics tell a story about a person called Johnny. He can only sing one note, and yet despite his limited vocal range, he sings with great passion and gusto. Another popular classic from the same musical, I Wish I Were in Love Again. In this musical, the song is sung by Dolos, that's the sheriff's daughter, to an unsuccessful lover who is trying to win her hand in marriage. So that was a quick recap of what's coming up during this hour, and this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Joshani Silva. We're going for a short break. We'll be right back after that. Stay tuned. And this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Joshani Silva. On this week's episode, Rodgers and Hart, their lives and times and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about some of their best compositions of all time. So the first song is called My Romance. This one was written for a 1935 musical called Jumbo starring Jimmy Durante. The musical went on to make waves and received some excellent reviews. It also went head to head with other great musicals of the time like Cole Porter's Jubilee and George Gershwin's Porgy and Bess. The song My Romance was originally sung by Gloria Grafton alongside the Paul Whiteman Orchestra, and it peaked on the charts at the number 18 position upon release. In 1962, the song was used as a theme song for the movie Billy Rose's Jumbo. Also in 1990, Carly Simons used the song as a title track to one of her albums, which went on to peak at number 46 on the charts and stayed there for 4 months. So this song basically talks about how nice it is for the singer to be in his lover's presence. The song talks about how it doesn't take any specific setting to make love happen, for instance, a blue lagoon or twinkling stars in the backdrop. The singer just wants to be around his lover, is the true meaning of love. Another composition called Johnny One Note. This one was written for a 1937 musical called Babes in Arms. It was first performed by Win Murray. In 1948, Julie Garland sang the song for a Rodgers and Hart biopic Words and Music. Over the years, popular covers of this song were performed by Ella Fitzgerald, Blossom Dearie, Julie Garland and others. So the lyrics tell a story about a person called Johnny. He can only sing one note, and yet despite his limited vocal range, he sings with great passion and gusto. And with that one note, he outperforms other singers who can sing the entire scale. So this song is a tribute to the power of self-belief and perseverance. Johnny in the song doesn't let his limitations stop him from making it big, instead using them as a way to shine. And his passion for singing inspires everybody around him. Some of the notable recordings of this song include those by Blossom Dearie for her album Blossom Dearie released in 1956, and Ella Fitzgerald in Ella Fitzgerald Sings a Rodgers and Hart Songbook in 1956. Another popular classic from the same musical, I Wish I Were in Love Again. In the musical, the song was sung by Dolos, the sheriff's daughter to an unsuccessful lover who is trying to win her hand in marriage. Another popular version of this song, a 1948 rendition by Julie Garland and Mickey Rooney. The song basically talks about the ups and downs of love. The lyrics open up with the singer lamenting about the sleepless nights she spends thinking about her lover, and then the mood switches to one of happiness as she recounts the good memories of her relationship. And then we get an insight into what's going wrong with the relationship. They're always on conflicting terms, never on the same page. And despite the drawbacks, the singer wishes she could relive the good times again, even at the expense of the bad ones. The song ends on a fatalistic note, with the singer singing how relationships never last forever. Yet overall the song's theme is one of, even though love is painful, it's worth it. This is the Weekend Jazz Update with Joshani Silva. On this week's episode, Rodgers and Hart, their biographies and best hits. And now it's time for some trending album news. So, Christmas is around the corner, and here's a great Christmas album to check out this festive season, an Oscar Peterson Christmas release in 1995. So this one's a beautiful, relaxing compilation of Christmas songs. On this album, legendary pianist Oscar Peterson is joined by guitarist Lon Lofsky, bassist David Young, and drummer Jerry Fuller. There's also guest appearances by vibraphonist Dave Samuels and flugelhornist Jack Shantz. So 14 tracks all in all, their renditions are swinging and fitting for the Christmas season. Even melancholy songs like Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas and I'll Be Home for Christmas are portrayed with a jaunty upbeat vibe. There's very bewitching renditions of Jingle Bells, and on God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen, there's a touch of Miles Davis style. There's a beautiful solo by Peterson on Winter Wonderland, two moving ballad performances on the Christmas Waltz and White Christmas. So a beautiful cool jazz compilation of Christmas songs by legendary jazz pianist and his quartet. So that was some trending album news on the Weekend Jazz Update with Joshani Silva. We're going for a short break. We'll be right back after that. When we come back, we're going to be talking about more of Rodgers and Hart's best compositions of all time. Stay tuned.